Hey guys, can everybody hear me okay? I tend to sometimes start talking quietly, so please yell at me if I start, if you can't hear me at all. One sec. Thanks, Matt. Sweet. So, hey guys, my name is Val. I do Node.js at MongoDB. Some of you have been coming to this meetup for a while, have probably be sick of me speaking all the time. So, here's another thing that I've been working on. So general idea behind this module called Acquit is one of the projects I maintain. Mongoose has an awful lot of docs, just a lot of documentation with a lot of code examples that I can't test at all right now. So between the 15 guides, 13 example projects, and all of these little inline examples, I don't know if any of these examples are broken at any given time. So I wanted to build something that enables me to get actual test coverage on these on my code examples. So what Acquit does is effectively it parses JavaScript or parses mocha tests, sort of your describe and it blocks, into a format that sort of is easier to generate docs from. Essentially, it's a thin layer around Esprimo, which is a JavaScript parser. Basically converts a very generic JavaScript AST tree into something that's just, okay, I have this describe, it contains these describes and these its. So, and once you have that, you're responsible for converting it into Markdown. And while that sounds like a lot of work, I've actually done it for several modules and for part of Mongoose as well. So it's actually pretty easy to do. Looks something like this. So once you read in a bunch of JavaScript code and call acquit.parse on it, you can go through all of the blocks and basically just concatenate a bunch of Markdown, and you get nice looking Markdown like this. So if your documentation fits in a README, it's absolutely perfect. You just really quickly just take all of your examples and shove them into your README, and you have documentation. One of the things I wanted to talk about today, though, is, well, Acquit's been around for a little while, but in the last couple of months, I found it necessary to start adding a plugin architecture because, well, sometimes it helps to transform blocks. As you can see, what was this guy's name? Well, I don't remember his real name. He was somewhere in Utah. But he commented on one of my projects where the docs are generated by Acquit, saying, "Oh, what are all these calls to done in the documentation? Because the done isn't defined anywhere." And, well, as you might guess, if you've used Mocha before, the way you tell Mocha that an asynchronous test is done is you call the done function. So this makes your documentation a little bit tricky to read because you have this function that's not defined anywhere floating around. So being able to transform these blocks before you actually shove them into documentation is pretty handy. So I wrote this little plugin called Acquit Ignore, which does basically what it looks like. Anything that is between Acquit Ignore start and Acquit Ignore end gets removed in the final output. So the sample code output from this will look like that. And including that plugin is pretty easy. All you do is just require it in and call the exported function. Now, implementing a plugin for Acquit is actually surprisingly really easy. So this is sort of a minimal implementation of Acquit Ignore. The real implementation is a little bit longer because it takes into account a little extra argument handling. But basically, Acquit itself has this handy transform function that basically lets you define a transform that gets executed on every time you call parse for every single individual block. So it'll get executed on every describe call, every single it call. So this will enable you to just transform the code and get rid of all of these, everything that starts with Acquit Ignore start and Acquit Ignore end. And actually the only tricky part here is getting this regular expression right, which if you've ever tried to play around with multi-line and regular expression matching in JavaScript, you'll know it's not exactly easy. So anyway, that's all I have, guys. Thank you for listening. You can find Acquit on GitHub and Acquit Ignore on GitHub or on NPM. It's just Acquit and Acquit-ignore. Looking forward to seeing contributions, stars, plugins, or developing your own plugins, whatever y'all have in mind. So, thanks.